In Isaiah chapter 6, Isaiah is shown a vision. He is in the throne room of God. And that place is a place truly that is fearful. That is, it is awe-inspiring. One would be awestruck by being there at the throne of God. And as a matter of fact, Isaiah says, "Woe is me, I am undone. I am," what does he say in this? That I am undone because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Isaiah is a prophet. Isaiah, one would imagine to be a rather righteous man, but in the presence of God, he considers himself to be undone, that this is a fearful place. It is a place that is powerful. It would be the absolute center of power. And in there, around that throne, there are seraphim. Verse 2, seraphim. These would be angelic beings they have this variety. Seraphim are different from cherubim. They're very different. And some angels appear as men. Others, no one would say that a seraphim looks like a man at all. They do not look like men. We don't have 6 wings. We don't have any wings. But they cry one to another. Verse 3, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts, Jehovah of hosts. Holy, holy, holy. The world is full of His glory." Here in this, these beings around His throne are there. And this is what they cry to one another. To another. They are crying these words out. And this would be a place of extraordinary respect, better be, and reverence. It better be. This morning we want to look at that word reverence and living reverently. And what does the word reverence mean? Because today we live in a time, and it's nothing unusual really, where there are people who are irreligious. There are people who make a mockery out of pretty much everything. Nothing is sacred to them. Nothing is sacred to them. And they will make fun of whatever. They will belittle whatever. It doesn't matter with them. But living reverently means having the respect toward God we're supposed to have. It is showing great respect. From the Greek, it is seriousness, sobriety, proper conduct, respectful. And it is respect shown to something or someone highly esteemed. Now, I've been to some places where they expected you to behave yourself, but they didn't expect a whole lot of reverence in that regard. But you better respect yourself. Or rather, you better behave yourself. You better do it. But there have been some places I have been where you better watch what you say, how you say it, how loud you say it, how you behave. When I was a kid, when I was in elementary school, we went to Washington, D.C., and we went to Arlington Cemetery, and there in Arlington they have the Tomb of the Unknowns, which is guarded 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's always guarded. And watching the guard and then the changing of the guard, to me, and it was in total silence. For all those watching, it was in total silence. To me, it was extremely intimidating. I was just a young kid, and hearing the shouting of commands and everything going on, and how extremely precise everything was, it is showing a respect and an honor to those who have died in war. It is that deep respect. And while I don't believe I've been there when the following has happened, let me just say this. I've also been as an adult and saw that things hadn't changed. That they were just as rigid, just as strict, just as solemn, you better show the respect. And if you don't show the respect, you will hear about it, and you will hear about it quickly, because they demand respect and reverence for the dead. They expect it. And they're not going to put up with a whole lot of shenanigans. They're not going to put up with a whole lot of that. Now, if that's expected among men, what do you think being in the presence of God expects? What's the expectation there? That we must be reverent to Him. And that is from our heart outward. And it's going to show. It's going to show through our behavior. But let's talk just for a second what reverence is not. And we'll show that. All right? Reverence is not just a stone silence. That's not reverence. Because while one can be silent as in reverence, that's not what reverence actually means. There are those that went before God crying and weeping, those that went before Him singing and begging and even shouting in joy. Were they showing Him disrespect or being irreverent to Him? And no, they weren't. They weren't. They were magnifying Him or praying to Him or glorifying Him, praising Him, or calling from the deepest point of them for help in their time of grief. And one can show reverence regardless of emotional state. Even in anger, show reverence, but not being angry with God. That's a different matter. Even in anger, one can show proper reverence and respect to God. Now, there is an absolute formality that's created by men. But that's created by men. We are to worship God in spirit and in truth, and all things are to be done decently in order, and everything is to be done from the heart. And all of this goes together. Spirit and in truth is the proper attitude, and truth is that of how He wishes to be worshiped, how He demands to be worshiped. Everything done decently and in order, where there's not confusion. Everything is done according to order. Everything is done according to the way He wants it to be done. And also in this is the motive is worship. That's part of the intent. That heart desiring to worship Him. Now, we have been created to worship and serve Him. Now, we'll get to that later today. But we have been created. Now, there are extremes. There are some extremes. We'll go to one extreme first. And that is of making God too familiar. God is our Creator. But God is not like one of your neighbors or one of your friends. He is above us all, and He demands. Now, neighbors and friends, we don't have to be reverent before them. We don't have to do that. But before God, we do. God demands the respect, and He deserves the respect. And here's the thing from Isaiah chapter 6. Look at what we see. We see these very powerful beings. No doubt they are far more, these seraphim, no doubt they're far more powerful than any human being ever. And we also have a prophet who is there, Isaiah, before that throne. And both of those, the seraphim and the prophet, are showing the respect due. And the prophet thinking himself as being doomed in all of this. Showing the proper respect. If those seraphim have respect for God, I better have respect for Him too. And I better show him reverence as well. And that's not just an outward show, that's from within. And from within, there's going to be that outward show. From within. But there's an extreme that makes him too familiar. And it is a problem. And it wasn't too long ago that I heard a man discussing this and thought it was a good idea. It is not a good idea. And that is to refer to our God as Dad or Daddy. That's making him too familiar. It wasn't too long ago that we discussed this. He passed away last year. I have a daddy, all right, but he's not my creator. He has a creator too, and it is God. My father never had much authority over anyone except his family. That's about it. And while there was respect due him, there's no doubt about that. God more so. But we cannot make him into something common, because that word in English does make him common. He is our Father. While that may seem formal, he desires our respect. He desires extreme reverence and regarding him as holy and for what he is, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. He is from everlasting to everlasting. No one is more powerful, no one is more holy, no one is greater than him. He has put everything into motion and maintains it by the second. It's best to refer to him, and because of Christ, we can call him Father. Because of Christ, we can. Now, there's the other extreme. And the other extreme would be demanding. And if an individual wants to do the following, that's up to them. I don't have a problem with them. It's the demanding of it that I have a problem with. And demanding that we must pray in Old English. I disagree with that. If one wants to do that, I don't have a problem with that. But somehow Old English shows a higher respect than what we speak day to day. I will tell you it does not. And I can tell you why. Do you think that among the British, when they're addressing when they address their new king, that they're going to use Old English? No, they're not. They're going to say you and he and we, and they're going to use those terms. We don't have two languages. Some languages do have two languages. One that is for common things, another that is for higher things. And yes, in any discussion of their king, such as the language that the Thai people have, they have two languages. One that is to address the king and higher things. And you don't address the king, you don't even talk about the king except in that more formal language. Okay, with English, that's not the case. And if we were to do that sort of thing, then I would suggest Old English is not where to go. Going to Greek or to Hebrew would be the way to go. That would be the way to show the proper respect. But you know what? In the days in the first century, when the New Testament was being written, there was more than one form of Greek. There was the Koine Greek, which is the common Greek that was spoken in the marketplace. That's what the New Testament is written in, is Koine Greek, the common Greek. There was a higher form of Greek that was for the educated, for those who want to be seen as somebody among the highly educated. That would be your philosophers and others. And they would, in writing, there was this supposedly higher form of Greek. But the Holy Spirit didn't choose that language. The Holy Spirit chose the common Greek. And there was nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Now, let's go to Proverbs chapter 28. Proverbs 28, and we go to verse 14. Happy is the man who is always reverent, but he who hardens his heart will fall into calamity. So here is this blessing. Actually, this is a pronouncement of blessing. The one who is always reverent, showing respect, showing reverence to God. Showing reverence to Him. And as we have said, there are, the mocker will mock, the scorners love their scorning. The simple ones love the simple things. But we need to remove ourselves from that and disregard those as being nothing and show the proper reverence that we should have. And there is a happiness that is associated with this. Now, let's go to Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6, just in a simple statement. In a simple statement, this is from what we call the model prayer. Jesus says in verse 9, in this manner, therefore, pray. All right, this is the model prayer. Our Father in heaven, look at the next words. Hallowed is your name. His very name is hallowed. Does that mean that I can use His name just casually? No, not at all. Just to lace my sentences with His name. No. It must be purposeful. When Thomas sees Christ, the resurrected Christ, and he sees the scars in His hand, he says, "My Lord and my God." What do you mean by that? He was identifying the Christ. It wasn't an exclamation or just something blurted out. He is identifying His Lord and His God, standing before Him. And to have the proper reverence for God does mean holding His name as holy. It is not to be used just for an exclamation, unless there is a purpose behind it, and it's not vain. That there is a purpose behind using His name, and yes, there's no problem in using His name. I speak of God all the time, and I have to. That's what we're supposed to do. And we can speak His name. We can speak His name Jehovah and Elohim and other names that He might have throughout the Bible. Theos in the Greek. We can use those names, but we must use them with the respect due. With the respect due, and not just thrown in as some kind of filler. And we can get into a habit of that. We can get into a habit. I had an uncle that he would say, and he was not a faithful man, but I liked him. When I was a child, I liked him a lot. And he would say, "My Lord." And he would say it just as a byword. He would say it just as an exclamation of something has happened, or he heard something that he didn't expect, and he would just say that. And as a child, I thought, well, he is declaring his faith in God. Growing up, I realized, no, he's not. No, he's not at all. He's not glorifying God. He's not praising God. It's just something he says. It's just empty words. That's all it was. And our speech can be a problem. It must be reeled in. And God does demand respect. Let's just look at Revelation chapter 1, just for a moment. Here is the glorified Christ that John sees. This is not the way He appeared on this earth in the flesh. He didn't appear like this. He wasn't born like this. And when he was on the cross, he wasn't like this at all. But verse 12, that he hears a voice saying, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. Okay, that's verse 11. Now verse 12. Then I turned to see the voice that spoke with me, and having turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. And in the midst of the 7 lampstands, one like the Son of Man, clothed with the garment down to the feet, and girded about the chest with a golden band. His head and his hair were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes like a flame of fire. His feet were like fine brass, as if refined in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. In his right hand, and he had in his right hand 7 stars. Out of his mouth went out a sharp 2-edged sword, and his countenance was like the sun shining in its strength. And notice the reaction. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead. Now, this is, once again, John is an apostle of Christ. John saw Christ on this earth. Now, when he sees him, this glorified form, he falls down as though dead. Now, he didn't die, but he falls down as though he is. But he laid his right hand on me, saying to me, do not be afraid, I am the first and the last. And then when we go into chapter 4 and all this, we now see a throne room scene very similar to what Isaiah saw in Isaiah 6. Very similar. And in these cases, in seeing this glorified Christ, or seeing in chapter 4 the one who's on the throne, let's just look at this. Verse 2. So Revelation 4 verse 2. Immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. And he who sat there was like a jasper and a sardius stone in appearance. And there was a rainbow around the throne, in the appearance like an emerald. Around the throne were 24 thrones, and on the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting clothed in white robes, and they had their crowns of gold on their heads. And from the throne proceeded lightnings, thunderings, and voices. 7 lamps of fire were burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. Before the throne there was a sea of glass like crystal. And in the midst of the throne and around the throne were 4 living creatures, full of eyes in front and in back. The first living creature was like a lion, the second living creature like a calf, the third living creature had the face like a man, and the fourth living creature was like a flying eagle. The 4 living creatures, each having 6 wings, were full of eyes around and within, and they do not rest day or night, saying, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Now, what about that is common? The fact of the matter is, if any of us saw the glorified Christ like John did, we would have the same reaction. And any scoffer would have the same reaction, would have the identical reaction. And going here in Revelation chapter 4 or in Isaiah chapter 6, of seeing the power that just emanates from here and all the things that are going on in this and the power that is set before you, does that not mean being respectful and showing reverence? Now, when we're in the presence of some authority, whether it's a police officer, or whether it's a mayor, or whether it's a governor, or whether it's a president, or whoever it is, there is a respect due. What about God? What about Him? There is respect due to Him as well. And no one has more authority than Christ has. No one. All authority has been given to Him in heaven and on earth. We're all here on the earth right now. Every single one of us, however many billion, 7 billion, whatever it happens to be, all of us are on this earth by His power. All of us remain on this earth by His power. If we live through the day today, it's because of His power. It's not by our own wit or wisdom. It's not by our own cleverness. It's not by anything like that, but it's Him alone. Does that not rank as extraordinary authority that has the authority of life and death over you at every instant? Does that not require some kind of reverence? Let's go to Habakkuk. Habakkuk chapter 2. Habakkuk chapter 2. And there is an extraordinary thing that Habakkuk says. In chapter 1, he makes certain, he's expressing some things. We just look at verse 12, just 1 in verse 12. Are you not from everlasting, O Lord, my God, my Holy One? We shall not die, O Lord. You have appointed them for judgment. O rock, you have marked them for correction. You are of pure eyes and to behold evil and cannot look on wickedness. Why do you look on those who deal treacherously and hold your tongue when the wicked devours a person more righteous than he? Now, what is Habakkuk saying? Habakkuk is actually, there's a bit of a complaint from Habakkuk saying there's a wickedness that is going on. Do something about it. Why do you hold still? Why do you do nothing? Why aren't you taking care of it when I think you should be taking care of it? Why aren't you doing that right this moment? But Habakkuk does something in chapter 2, verse 1, that's extraordinary. And it shows now a reverence that he has. A reverence toward God. And he says this, I will stand my watch and set myself on the rampart and watch to see what he will say to me and what I will answer when I am corrected. Now that's extraordinary words. And it's showing that, yeah, I have said these things, I have set these things out, but now I will patiently wait. I'll do my duty. I'll patiently wait, and what I will answer when I am corrected. I think he already has developed that answer. I think he already has that in his mind. What I will answer when I am corrected. That whatever I may want, it's God's will that matters, not mine. And recognizing that. And there is a reverence in that. A reverence, and not being like a spoiled child of I must have my way and I must have it now. Making demands on God, that's hardly reverence. That's being demanding. And that's expecting Him to just snap to at our command. Now let's go to Psalm 130. Psalm 130. It's 8 verses long. It is one of the Song of Ascents, and I really do like all the songs of ascents. These are songs that were sung as you have various family groups or various villages that are making their way to Jerusalem for what the requirements at Passover would be one of those requirements. Pentecost would be one of those requirements. You come back to Jerusalem. And these would be the songs that are sung as they go. A song of ascent. Out of the depths I have cried to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ear be attentive to the voice of my supplication. If you, Lord, should mark iniquities, O Lord, who could stand? But there is forgiveness with you, that you may be feared. You may be respected. If there's nothing but destruction from Him, nothing but destruction, we would fear Him, but we would also despise Him. Because there's nothing but destruction. There's nothing we can do about it. There'd be nothing good about Him. It'd just be someone creating things to destroy those things. It's like me and my brother when we were young, and we had gotten through with certain toys that we consider to be childish now. We would take firecrackers and we would blow them up. Okay, that's what we would do. And my brother, who would become chemical engineer. Well, even in those days, he knew how to make certain things very flammable or even explode, which that I survived my childhood is remarkable. But we would blow things up. Now, if God were just creating us in order to destroy us, He would not be worthy of any kind of reverence at all, because we're just made to be destroyed. That's it. But notice, but there is forgiveness with you, that you may be feared. And that word feared also means respected and loved. And that reverence, deep reverence, is there as well. I wait for the Lord, my soul waits, and in His word I do hope. My soul waits for the Lord. There is that respect, that reverence. More than those who watch for the morning. Yes, more than those who watch for the morning. O Israel, hope in the Lord. For with the Lord there is mercy, and with Him is abundant redemption. And He will redeem Israel from all its iniquities. All coming from there. Well, does this person, we've looked at the throne room scenes, we looked at that of the glorified Christ just by the presence of God and by the appearance of God and the power that is there. That demands respect, but there's more to it than that. And Psalm 130 is addressing that as well. That with the love that He has, He's worthy. He's worthy of everything. With the forgiveness of sins, with His abundant redemption, with His mercy, He's showing that He is greater than just irrational power, or just a show of force. He is more than that. He is truly holy, holy, holy. And He wants more out of us. And it does require obedience to Him. Now, let's just quickly go to Exodus chapter 3. God is choosing Moses. He's already chosen Moses. And He's been working in Moses' life even when Moses did not know it. But Moses, who is going to be the greatest of the prophets of the Old Testament, regarded as such and rightfully so. From him come all the laws. Through him. But now, chapter 3, verse 1. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jericho, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the back of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of the bush. So he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. So Moses could see that this bush was burning, which may not have been an extraordinary sight to have seen this. But what was extraordinary is, the bush isn't consumed. Because eventually what happens is it will burn very fiercely. If it's dry wood, it's going to burn very, very fiercely. And then in a few minutes, it'll be nothing. It'll just be coals sitting there. There really won't be anything flaming anymore. But it wouldn't stop. And that would be unusual. It wouldn't stop. It just continued and continued and continued. Then Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush does not burn. So when the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not draw near this place. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground. Stop where you are and take off your sandals, because this is to be regarded as holy. Stop. Now there are times when, such as Mount Sinai, when the Lord was on Mount Sinai, that no one was to touch the mountain. Not even an animal. No one was to touch the mountain or they would die. Same with the Ark of the Covenant. Once it is built, once it is ready, no one is to touch it, not even the high priest, Not even those priests that are to carry it. They had special rods that go through, and you have men who will carry it, where they will not touch the Ark of the Covenant. They won't touch it, because if you do, you will die. And Uzzah discovered that. Uzzah and David discovered that. While David didn't touch it, he saw what Uzzah did, and Uzzah wouldn't have touched it if it hadn't been for David's plan of moving the ark, which David wasn't following God's way in which the ark was to be moved. The ark was to be moved by priests, specifically the Kohathites of the priests. That's a specific family under Aaron. They're the ones that move it. You don't put it on an ox cart. That's not how it's to be transported. Why? Because it is to be revered. The power of God is there. It is holy. Now, if a mountain touching a particular mountain could kill you because the presence of God is there, or the Ark of the Covenant could kill you if you touch that because the presence of God is there, what about the presence of God? Does He not deserve some sort of reverence? And He does. And it's a matter we go back to defining that word. There's a sobriety that is there, a seriousness that is there, a proper conduct and respect that is given. Now, we need to grow, but there's no way we're going to grow spiritually if we do not show the reverence due God. We will never grow. We will just be stagnant and doing nothing. But we must have the reverence due Him. And regarding Him for who He is, God. And Christ as the one who is with God and is God. The one who has created us, saved us, and bring us into heaven, putting this world completely aside, destroying this world altogether, and the only things that will remain from this earth, the only things remaining that were ever on this earth, will be human souls. That's it. That's all that remains. And there's a parting of the ways there of those human souls. Some will be cast into hell. Some will be brought into heaven. But it's by choice that this is done. We ask this morning that we look at our lives. Judgment will come. From the very one that John saw and fell as dead before him, that one that John just fell in front of, is that same one that will judge all of us. Wasn't too long ago we talked about the book of life. That book of life, better, you want your name in there. You want your name in that book, because there is the list of the saved. There's the list of the inhabitants of heaven. And God, showing His love for us, is showing the goodness and the fact that He is holy. We ask this morning that if you need to respond to the invitation in any way, if we can help you, if you need prayers of the congregation, that you come as we stand and sing.